Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in New Zealand, overseas. We welcome you to Weekender on Sunday. My name is Sunil, Kaushal, and I'm your host today. Today's topic is going to be around vaccination. What we have seen in New Zealand this week is the highest number of cases that have come because of Delta. There have also been information that the government only started preparing for Delta later in April, June, July, which was very short of the government to do that. We also saw the highest number of cases this week. And while we saw that, we didn't see the three spokesperson from the government announcing that. There has been a lot of fatigue among people asking the questions, where is the government when this is the highest number of cases? But certainly, some people will argue that people and ministers do need rest. Fair enough. Apart from there have been other things going on in New Zealand. For example, the consultation was done by the government around Three Waters, but then it has been passed with 60 of the 69 local councils being against it. But we'll discuss that another day. And moving on to the T20 Cricket, we have seen quite a big upset this week. In fact, last Sunday, two nations were watching the intensity of a cricket match. And for the first time, Pakistan beat India, that too by 10 wickets, which is quite amazing. But well done to the Pakistani team. And tonight, again at 3 a.m., it will be divided loyalties between the Kiwis and the Indians as BlackCaps and India play the T20 crucial match. Crucial because both the countries need to win the game. We will discuss that later with a BlackCaps player as to who will reign supreme. However, moving on to our discussions for today on vaccination. Look, I am double vaxxed. I became double vaxxed not because someone told me. I took vaccination, that too double jab, and I'm happy to take the booster. I did it for myself. But what has been coming through has been the narrative that if you don't get double jabbed, then your freedom will be taken away. Now, people are beginning to feel a little bit agitated about that. We saw a crowd of 5,000 gather in Auckland Domain. And even today, if you went up Domain Road in Auckland, there were a lot of protesters. Like, you will always have both sides of the story. There will be people that don't want to get vaxxed, and there are people who want to get vaxxed. But the notion of trying to divide the country based on vaccination and non-vaccination is not really the New Zealand that everyone wants. But from a government's point of view, they want to protect the people. And today, to discuss about vaccination, we have three MPs, members of parliament, out of two who are GPs. They are doctors by trade also. And representing Labour Party, we have Dr. Gaurav Sharma. Welcome, Gaurav. We also have the deputy leader of ACT Party, Brooke Velden. Welcome, Brooke. And joining us is another doctor and a deputy leader of the National Party, Dr. Reti. Welcome to all of you. And thank you very much for your time. Gaurav, is the government taking the freedom away from people on vaccination?
No, definitely not. If anything, I think, if you look at what's happened in the last year and a half, the response from the government, which has been based on science, has made sure that the freedoms have been protected. Until the recent outbreak, we were out there, going swimming and flying to Queenstown and making sure we were having the best meals at restaurants and taking kids out to the playground. So the good response from government right in the beginning has made sure that the freedoms hadn't been taken away for all this time, while all the other countries around the world have really suffered. And looking into the future, the new system that's been announced around traffic light system makes sure that people have an option. At the end of the day, businesses have an option if you want to take vaccinated customers or you want to take non-vaccinated customers.
Yeah. Brooke, would you agree with Gaurav?
Oh, look, I think some of the recent announcements that the government have made people feel like their freedoms are being taken away because, your movements in particular in the middle of a lockdown are being restricted. So that I think that is a fair thing to say, is that some freedoms have been restricted. But when it comes to the vaccinations and people being told that they have to be vaccinated or they'll lose their jobs, I think a lot of people have been feeling like that's quite heavy-handed. And I think what the government should have done, instead of, mandating to all businesses and saying, well, you have to fire your staff if they're not vaccinated, what they should have done is just made it very clear what those businesses' legal obligations are, so that they actually have the ability under employment law to make a decision about whether they think their business can operate with different levels of risk and allow people to discriminate. Because I think what's happened at the moment is people are feeling like the government is telling them that they're going to be forced to quit their jobs.
Sure. Shane, you're a doctor yourself. You would recommend everyone to get vaccinated, wouldn't you?
Yes, I do. I believe that the vaccine is effective. I believe that it gives us the best chance of having choices and options at some point in the future. To answer your first question, yes, our freedoms clearly have been taken in some sense, in as much as that, as Brooke was saying, our rights of travel, the right to return home, the right for New Zealanders to return home at their will and at a time. Clearly, we don't have that. My right not to wear a mask, clearly we don't have that. But as part of that trade-off, because we believe that giving up some of those rights will protect us, will protect the health system, we've traded that off. That's the social license we've signed up to with the government. To do that, we need trust, we need transparency, and my concern is that that social license might slowly be slipping away, as it did for Boris when he hit Freedom Day. He didn't want to hit Freedom Day when he did, just that the Brits were coming out of a winter. They saw the summer, they saw the horizon and said, I'm done with this. And at some point, New Zealanders will be done with it. And when we are, we need to be at a high level of vaccination so we've got choices.
Sure. Gaurav, the recent stat as of today says that if the rate of vaccination continues as it is, we will not be into the traffic light system till middle of January. And we've got a graph here, but do you agree that the vaccination rollout has been slow?
Well, I guess in terms of the rollout itself, it has, been based on when the vaccines were internationally first available, because it has taken time to obviously develop a vaccine. It's a novel virus. It does take a while.
Gaurav, the Prime Minister said that we were in the front of the queue. So why the delay?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So when, first of all, you have to develop the vaccine, then you've actually got to make sure that they reach New Zealand, and then you've got to set up a whole system, a logistical system whereby the vaccine are distributed centrally down to every pharmacy, medical practice, supermarket where we are getting the vaccines now. So in my view, it has gone how it was predicted to go, and we have been able to procure vaccines as fast as New Zealand could. And it is available in almost every nook and corner.
It is available now, but shouldn't it be available, Brooke, shouldn't it be available way back last year even?
Yeah, I think we were slow off the mark. We didn't try as hard as we could have to get hold of vaccines as fast as possible. But I think one of the issues that came out with the rollout was that the government decided that it would put in place its own strategy to get the vaccine out to communities. And we've seen that just hasn't worked. And what they should have done is brought community leaders on board, GPs on board, who already have access and know who the vulnerable members of their community are, to help with that rollout. And I think one of the issues that we've seen is the number of people who are currently going for their first dose is dropping off significantly. And it's because the incentives to get vaccinated are all wrong. Everybody who's now vaccinated is now sitting at home wondering, how many more people do we have to wait for before we can get some of our freedoms back? And we have to give that incentive.
But Shane, don't you think that it is, we need to give the Labour Party or Labour government a little bit benefit of doubt? And Brooke, you can also say, put in your comments here, but don't you think that it was something unforeseen in the world, and as Prime Minister said, it's unprecedented times. right? Do you think the medical industry or the Ministry of Health was not prepared properly for this? Did they take it lightly that we were aiming for a zero eradication of the virus without thinking that Delta will come or may come?
So I think parts of the statements are correct. With the first outbreak last year, it was new for everyone, although I would contend, and I think the government has contended as well, that we were slow-ish to get our first vaccines and get the first set up. But the second outbreak, we've definitely been unprepared. I mean, we built no new ICU beds in Waitemata, Counties Manukau or Auckland for 15 months. Not one. Not my words, the minister's words. Not one adult standing resourced ICU bed. Why would we do that? Or Auckland DHB said we're short of negative pressure rooms. We've got some money left over from a project, 6 million actually. Can we build negative pressure rooms? The minister said no. And then urgently we end up building them in the middle of a pandemic. So yes, we were unprepared, but so was the rest of the world for the first outbreak. But we had no excuse for the current outbreak.
Gaurav, Shane's got a very good point here, because look at it. We have been slow. We knew Delta is there in the world. And as a risk matrix, we should have done some sort of a risk analysis, how we are going to be prepared for it. There were more than 100 days with zero COVID cases. So why did we just sleep off?
Well, look, as far as the risk analysis is concerned, there's multiple ways to mitigate it. And that includes things like MIQ, which has made sure that everybody who's come into the country, it's been done in a systematic fashion. It has included things like making sure, we've gone into lockdown as soon as the cases showed up. It has made sure the vaccination. But coming to Dr. Reti's point around ICUs, for example, we've trained already 1,220 nurses to help with ICU and SGU capacity, and there's another 180 who are currently being trained.
Yeah,
and
but Gaurav, what's the use of training when you don't have the rooms?
No, we do. We have 350 ICU, SGU beds at the moment, and we can increase them up to 550. So there is capacity for that too. So, that's one part of the solution. Similarly, New Zealand, for example, recently you might have heard, we bought from Merck Sharp and Dome. We are one of the first countries to buy an antiviral drug, which is shown to decrease the mortality rate in COVID by 50%. And we are one of the first countries to buy 60,000 doses of it, so that people who end up getting COVID and have mild symptoms can be prevented from getting worse and having to be hospitalized or ending up, dead. So there are multiple things that are being done. The government is taking quite a broad approach to this. ICU beds are one of those, but it also includes MIQ. It makes sure, lockdown, vaccinations, but also the new antiviral drugs. So there's quite a few things happening in that space.
Brooke, why are you disagreeing with Gaurav?
Oh, look, I think the arguments about MIQ and ICU nurses it's so saddening to me. I've been dealing with a man whose wife is an ICU nurse who has been locked out of the country away from her children because MIQ has not deemed her to be somebody who is needed back here, and she can actually help with the COVID response. I think we are being a bit slow, even getting people through the border. I mean, the government only recently started to allow health workers to have allocations within MIQ to bring people in to help with the COVID response. And they should have been doing that months ago. They're just been constantly dropping the ball.
Dr. Shane, we have Dr. Gaurav rightly said that, we are training more nurses and we've got ICU beds. But then coming to the MIQ thing, why is one person occupying 100 rooms MIQ hotel? I mean, aren't there so many? I mean, you probably read, and I believe you had a case similar to what Brooke has had. And we saw this person who was in MIQ for 13 days, who was let out for 2 hours to see his dying father, only to be returned. And then 7 hours later, after 14 days. I mean, that's a mockery of our system. Don't you agree?
I don't buy the 1,400 ICU nurses for starters. If anyone on the call knows what their training is, let me tell you what their training is. It's 4 hours online and 4 hours on a dummy. In no chance or shape is that an ICU nurse. They can provide nursing cares rolling patients and maybe massaging and assisting, but that is not an ICU nurse. So that's not correct for the minister to say he's trained 1,400 ICU nurses.
So that's smokes and mirrors from the minister.
It's care at best, and I'm not belittling the skills of a nurse. I'm just saying it is care that they're providing in ICU. Secondly, MIU has been a problem and continues to be a problem. Let's remember, we're only having this discussion because the government said they would keep us safe, and they let coronavirus in twice. First, back in March last year, and second on August the 17th, or probably 10 days before August the 17th. Certainly this current outbreak, still no idea where it came from. So how do we know that that hole hasn't been closed? The allocation for all those thousands of people, 30,000 in the first allocation lot, who are waiting to come into MIQ, the lottery of misery it's being called, that's just a mockery. Why there is no waiting, why tourists may be able to come in, but a New Zealander wanting to come home to stay cannot, just eludes me here today. And yet the next lottery draw this week, that's exactly what's going to happen. It'll be whoever by random choice is chosen. So MIQ has served some purposes, but it certainly hasn't been perfect, and there's certainly a lot of work to do with MIQ. They were very late to ventilation. I'm still of a view that we should be having a purpose-built MIQ facility, not pretending hotel rooms are quarantine.
Gaurav, I see you disagreeing with Dr. Shane.
Well, look, first thing I do want to acknowledge that, MIQ is not a perfect system. It hasn't been. And again, coming back to it is a novel issue. It's a completely new pandemic, and setting up a whole system of accommodation for thousands of arrivals is a difficult way to manage things. But every time government has taken feedback on board, we have tweaked it, whether it's about healthcare workers having a special slot to be allowed to get in. Whether it's about emergency allotment as well, where people have specific reasons to be able to let in the country. As far as building specific centers for MIQ is concerned, my view is, at the end of the day, if you are also helping amongst the MIQ, you're also helping the hospitality industry by using these hotels, which are going to be empty for the most part anyway. So you're actually making a huge difference in these businesses where people are staying. They've got a flow of income, but at the same time, you're helping lots of other industries which are related to it. You have security guards, you have chefs. You've got so many people who are involved in this MIQ system who are otherwise part of a hospitality system.
Dr. Gaurav, listen, the minister has come out and said you can self-isolate, right, after 7 days, etc. Why are you waiting 2 weeks, literally 2 weeks or more, when you can start doing it now? Tell me, do you need what needs to be done for this?
Well, but there's a lot of stuff that goes out in the background. You have to make sure that these people who are isolating at home, that you can track them, that you can make sure that they are following the rules.
So are you saying that we don't have those systems in places?
Well, that is my understanding, that they are working on that system. There's lots of moving parts to this. It's not as easy as saying that somebody just lands.
Why wait till November 2021 to have that system?
Well, that's November 2021 is tomorrow.
But 31st of or 14th of November, as the minister has rightly said. But why? We've wasted 1 year. There have been so many families separated, as Brooke rightly said. Yeah, there have been people wanting to visit their dying family, can't make it. Where is the humanity in there, Brooke? Where's the humanity from the government in this?
Oh, look, there is no humanity. I've also been dealing with a woman who is pregnant, and, her husband was locked offshore, and she was so stressed, her midwife thought she would lose the baby. And she actually took the government to court, even though she had been denied an MIQ allocation. And once she took them to court, she got an MIQ allocation. That's how insane the system is. You have to take the government to court to actually get a room that you are entitled to as a New Zealander to come into your own country. But the issue is, just rightly as you say, we actually have people self-isolating in the community now who are a bigger threat to COVID in the community than we do having coming through the border. We should actually allow people who are double vaxxed, who have a negative pre-departure test, to come home and actually self-isolate for 14 days at their homes now. I don't see any reason why we should stop that.
Shane, there is a sense that for the Maoris, there is a mistrust of the government And that's why they don't want to get vaccinated. There is a great article today in Stuff, about a family, a whānau in Hamilton that is being divided. And it stems from the childhood of the mistrust that they have in the government. Now, it's not the Labour government or the National or any, right? It's just the government thing. How do you build that trust? And how do we get the vaccination numbers up in the whānau?
So I'll just come back to a point that Gaurav raised, because I think he's right. There have been some independent advice and reviews around how we can do better. Problem is they haven't been adopted. So if we look back at the Roche report in June, amongst other things, this is the independent report to the government. They commissioned it and asked them to do this piece of work. He said several things. First of all, he said, how we have close plus and casual plus? Get rid of the plus. Just have two categories, close and casual, and do that immediately. And instead, we added another category called high risk. So that didn't happen. He said ARPH, the Auckland Regional Public Health Service, is severely undermanned. It needs another 25 full-time equivalents. To date, they added 12, and they were distressed and crying 3 days into this outbreak. That's what the OIA shows. The third thing he said was you need to build ICU capacity, and clearly that hasn't happened. So while there has been independent advice, it hasn't been taken on board. To answer your question, I frame the distrust that Māori have in terms of institutions. That way it doesn't talk to government, this government, that government, or anything else. It's actually some of the institutions that Māori have distrust in. And that's a problem, because on one level, they're sort of saying, look, my lot in life is due to the institutions that have placed me here, be it that we agree with that or not. And so there's sort of what I'm calling a vaccine utu, if you like. I am going to push back against the institutions in the world that have created my lot in life. And the challenge to sort of unbuckle that or unfreeze that, first of all, starts with respect. I respect your view, even though it may be a different view to mine, okay? I will bring the best information I can, but I will respect whatever position you land on, because that's what we do in a democracy. I may not understand it and I may disagree, but I respect that. So the first part to unfreezing that sort of view is to show respect. The second is you need to come with credibility to the discussion. You need to come with some sort of track record. What I'll say to you is, having been out vaccinating in remote and rural areas for the past 3 weeks, there's very few people, and Gaurav may know this as well, if you've delivered their baby, that you won't have trust with, okay? And even though they may be entrenched in one view, you bring trust with you, because at some point in their life when they've most needed you, you were there for them. And so you start from a starting point of trust, which talks to what Brooke was saying early, primary care and the late implementation of primary care, why a quarter of GPs and 20% of pharmacies were credentialed to give the vaccine weeks into this outbreak eludes me. We trusted them to give the measles vaccine when we had the 2019 measles outbreak. By the way, measles is more infectious than coronavirus. Why we didn't trust them, why it's a 6-week credentialing process, photos of your entry, your exit, and an 80-page operating document, I don't know. In my hands, if you give the measles vaccine today, you're credentialed to give the coronavirus vaccine. Get on, lift those rates. That's what I'd do.
Dr. Sharma, Dr. Shane has a very good point. You both are GPs, right? You both can vaccinate people. Why did the government wait so long before the GPs could vaccinate? I mean...
Yes, so look, first of all, I would say, I agree with most of the things that Dr. Reti has said. And, when it comes to our Māori Pacifica communities, I worked in a medical practice where 80% of our patients were Māori Pacifica. And, there are historic reasons in terms of trusting our institutions, or whether it is government. And it is quite true that, it is important to have that trust built outside of that just vaccination space. So it's not just about getting them vaccinated.
Oh, sure. You're talking about trust, right?
Yeah.
Why did the government not trust doctors like yourself and Dr. Shane and others, the local farmers, local GPs, to vaccinate their customers, their clients from the very start?
Look, it does take time. As I said to you before, setting up logistics like that does take time. but at the same time, you also have to understand that you don't want to, when you roll it out in the beginning, you want to make sure that those patients can also access other care. Because, I think in the last 1.5 years, everything has been about COVID. But, as Dr. Reti knows, we're still getting people with kidney stones. We're still getting people with eye problems. We're still getting people with heart problems. And, it is important to make sure that whole system holds, whether it's tertiary care, whether it's primary care, all of that needs to hold together. So the rollout has been done in a way, initially it was done in a way that, just separate centers were doing vaccination to just make sure that they were churning up the rates quickly. And now it has gone through all these different providers. And one of the things, it is important, as Dr. Reti said, about trust. And what we're doing now is making sure that, Māori health providers are part of it. In Hamilton, for example, we've got a big Pacifica provider, which is a major part of this vaccination. And you can see, the outcomes are different because people do trust them.
But Dr. Sharma, that doesn't answer my question that I asked you. Why did the government not trust? We're talking about trust, okay? Why did the government not trust the GPs who vaccinate their own clients for a flu shot, right? You get a phone call. Why didn't they do it, earlier when we could have been vaccinated way back?
But as I said, it's not about trust. It's not that the government doesn't trust the GPs. But what I'm trying to say is, the rest of the system still has to hold. So how we started initially was having separate centers, which were doing a high churn out of vaccinations to begin with. Since then, it has gone out. We now have mobile clinics. We're doing them in supermarkets and all sorts of places. But you need to make sure that logistics works. That logistic needs to work in terms of distributing the vaccines. You have to get the right temperature. You have to get the right equipment.
Understand, Dr. Sharma, you can understand very well why people would not buy into your argument that all these things need to be done when you can get a jab for the flu shot from your local GP. Brooke, I'll come to you. ACT Party says 1st of December is a Freedom Day, but we are still not going to be 90% till then. Then what happens?
Yeah.
And we're talking about trust. So how do the people trust ACT Party on that? And National Party also, because they're calling here to God.
I think what the issue here is that the government has kind of come to the similar issue that the ACT Party has, which is we do actually need to get people vaccinated because we need it for our hospitalizations and for our care of our community and for safety. The issue that we have is that they've set up this traffic light system saying we've got to reach 90% before anybody can then move on. We really should have just set a line in the sand and said, this is now the date where we start to move on, because you can't hold people ransom if we end up only getting to 89% and then continuing on. You have whole sectors of society that can't operate. One example is just the events community, the events sector who were hoping that they could put on things, concerts and all sorts of events over summer. Who can't have the certainty of knowing what is the date that we're actually allowed to operate. I think we need to put a line in the sand, and this is our Freedom Day. Everybody at this point has had the chance to be vaccinated, and then we should get on with it, because we actually need to have more incentives to get people vaccinated. And the ACT Party put an incentive there and said every person who gets a vaccine should have a $250 tax credit. If you turn up and you get vaccinated, you can have $250 for Christmas. That's an incentive to get people out before the 1st of December for Freedom Day to get people vaccinated in the community. What the government's doing is just waiting for people to sluggishly turn up for themselves.
Dr. Shane, people would question that I didn't get anything. I'm double vaxxed. Where was the incentive for me from the government? What would National Party have done different?
So I think the narrative is better discussed in terms of privileges rather than punishment. I think sometimes the actions may be the same, but to frame it in terms of, like they have, you'll be able to attend a concert rather than you won't be able to do X, Y, or Z. So I think how this is communicated. But let's come back. We're focused on the vaccination rates. In our hands are some things that are really important before we sign ourselves through to that. For example, saliva testing. For example, rapid antigen testing. For example, contact tracing, which we understand is about to break at more than 100 cases a day as well. So while we focus on a vaccination level, and I get that that's important, let's not forget that testing, tracing, isolation and quarantine, all those things are really important as well. And in our hands, we said 85 to 90%, but they need to be addressed. They need to go hand in hand. Everyone's worried about the top line vaccination level because it's sort of easy to understand. But if we don't have contact tracing, if we don't have testing that's ubiquitous, it won't matter what vaccination rate we're going to be at, we're going to fail. So I just want to put to that yes, there is a level, and we came to a level as well, 85 to 90, but underneath that we actually had 10 steps that needed to be developed and well underway before we'd say, right, 85 to 90, you're good to go.
Dr. Sharma, you were nodding your head, so you're agreeing that 85 to 90 is a good thing rather than 90%?
No, I'm actually agreeing with Dr. Reti that we need to make sure we don't forget about using a COVID tracer app and getting swabs done if you are feeling sick, and this is despite having been vaccinated. But I do quickly want to just go back to what Brooke was saying. I think I just don't agree with the argument saying you have to draw a line in the sand and say, well, this is going to be Freedom Day, because we could have done this last year and said, well, actually we locked down in March 2020. Let's have Freedom Day in April. So it's very, I just think it's wrong to say let's just aim for a specific day rather than aim for a specific number. And the question then is, where to from there? Like, if we end up with, I don't know, 80% instead of 90%, and we just open up on that specific day that they want to, do you really think that, people will be out there shopping in malls, sitting in restaurants, buying food, or would people be scared because the numbers would just keep rising up? So I think, I understand, completely acknowledge, everything that's been said here. Yes, the MIQ system is not 100%. Yes, people have been in lockdown for quite a bit of time, especially in Auckland. But, we are all in this together, making sure that, we get to a certain point where enough people are vaccinated and we can still enjoy those freedoms.
On the statement that you say we are all in this together. Look, the Prime Minister has not been in her constituency for 11 weeks. She's the Prime Minister of the country. She should be out there when one case comes up, she comes up on the pulpit and says, we are locking down. 160 cases come, you don't see the 3 of them anywhere. Yeah. How can people trust now, 11 weeks in Auckland, the biggest business capital of New Zealand, right? There are businesses going out. There are people having sleepless nights. $800, $400 is not going to cut, for a business. How do you justify that?
No, look, first of all, I don't buy the criticism. The Prime Minister's not been in her electorate. Look at what's going on around you. There's a lot of stuff that the Prime Minister is dealing with. So I think Prime Minister being in her electorate, that's just not a fair criticism. And I think that's the same with everybody else. I'm sure it's the same with the leader of the opposition, or even
the leader of the opposition, Dr. Gaurav, leader of the opposition and leader of the PAC came to Auckland. And
yes, but there are different, different responsibilities as well.
Certainly there are.
I think that one specifically is a little bit unfair.
1 day out of 11 weeks.
Yeah, but I think that one is a little bit unfair. For the Prime Minister, even in a normal time, Prime Minister, there's a lot of other stuff they are dealing with. But coming to your other point about businesses suffering, as I said, yes, I completely acknowledge that. But what I'm trying to say is, right, and I've had this conversation recently with our local business association. Yes, businesses are struggling, and yes, there is wage subsidy and there's quite a few other things out there, but that's not 100% income. That's not going back to the levels they were earning. But that is my question. What happens if we are 70% or 80% vaccinated? And the numbers in Waikato, for example, we're getting 8, 9, 10. If we end up getting 100 cases a day, like Auckland, 200 cases a day, will people really be out there, at those businesses, the same businesses that do want to open up? Will we really be out there eating at restaurants and going to the supermarket and malls, buying stuff for Christmas? But what I'm saying is, it's just a few days more to go before we can get to that 90%. And then all of these, sacrifices would be worth it. And we are tracking really well. We are getting closer to the 90% mark. So, completely acknowledge all the sacrifices that everybody's making. But, we're very close to the finish line now.
Yeah. Brooke, do you agree with the argument that Dr. Sharma has just made?
No, I think the issue here is that we're pretending like the government has actually done everything right, and that, it will be easy just to reach our targets. The government should be getting out there, providing more incentives to people to actually get vaccinated. I see that they've currently just put in place another 120 million to encourage Māori people to get vaccinated. But in fact, they shouldn't be doing that on racial lines. They should be putting money out there trying to get everybody vaccinated. We need as many people in the community to be vaccinated as possible. And unfortunately, they've left these incentives far too late. And I also note that they've kind of cynically put the targets on the DHBs because they know that they're getting rid of the DHBs next year. So if they don't reach the targets in time, they can say it's the DHB's fault rather than the government's fault. And really, it's just the government being slow off the mark.
Dr. Reti, do you agree with Brooke?
Yes, I do. I think just a comment on the DHB reforms that Brooks mentioned. This has to be the dumbest time to be restructuring a health system, surely. In the middle of a pandemic, could there be a worse time? This is nuts, absolutely crazy. I think it's going to be a struggle to get to 90%. It's going to be a real struggle for Northland. We're tail end Charlie at the moment. We've got the most number of unvaccinated first dose people anywhere in New Zealand, even compared to the big cities, about 40,000. That's going to be a real challenge for us to get there. And while I'm hearing the number of 90% put up there, let's remember 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months ago, government wouldn't put a target. They weren't into targets. Because remember, if you set a target, you were permissioning those outside the target not to appear. And then magically, 90% became a target. Remember, we removed all the health targets because they weren't suitable and called them health indicators. And yet suddenly this target of 90% is the be all and end all. And that sort of is what erodes the trust. That what I'm saying to you is, if we don't get to 90%, we may be forced by the loss of the social license, not the number we get to say New Zealanders are done. It may be taken out of our hands. That's what's happened in other countries.
Dr. Sharma, just talking about trust, you are of Indian heritage. Why is the number, and we talked about the uptake in the Maori population, the Indian population is probably about 95 and over. Why is that?
Well, I guess the first thing I would say is, just going back to some of the conversations we've had before, it almost seems like the ACT Party wouldn't want you to talk about those numbers because they don't believe in demographic breakdown of vaccination numbers. And I'm sure Dr. Reti has more to say on that as well. But, it is important that there are sectors in the community, however you break them, whether it's, high income, low income, whether it's based on region, but there are people, there are community, there are demographies who are less vaccinated than others. And Maori and Pacifica communities are part of those statistics. And that 120 million that is being spent to make sure those, Maori providers, Pacifica providers are going out there and getting vaccinated, that's the right thing to do. So to say that, it's actually dividing the country across race lines or anything like that, I don't think that's the right thing to say. Coming to, Asian communities and Indian communities, I guess it's just, again, it's based on historical reasons. As we talked about, I've talked about my Maori Pacifica patients as well. It's just the people have felt, disenfranchised for a long period of time, and there is so much other stuff there in terms of that relationship with institutions, and that's what needs to be corrected. And it's not going to happen. I think we all need to acknowledge it's not going to happen in 1 week or 1 month or 1 year. There's a lot more here, and it's not just about vaccinations. It's not just about health. It's everything. It's housing, it's education. It's about that ownership. Tangata Whenua, that ownership of land and their own sort of life as well. So there's a lot more to it. And that needs to be addressed. But I think that 120 million goes a little bit further in terms of making sure that people are, hearing from people they actually trust, people who are part of their community and their providers who they trust. So I think it is quite important that money does go to those providers.
Thank you. Look, we have had a very good debate. Thank you so much to Dr. Gaurav Sharma and Dr. Shane Reti and Brooke Van Velden. Just before the three of you leave, I just want to ask you maybe one tip for the week that you want to say. So I'll start off with Brooke. Is there one thing that you want to leave our viewers and our readers with?
Yeah, I would just say the one thing is that my thoughts are really with everybody who is currently in a form of lockdown in Auckland. I know it's a real struggle and it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end, but it's so important to keep mental health in check. And one of the items that the Mental Health Foundation says is just to make sure that you keep to a routine and you do actually go out and exercise like you are able to under a lockdown, because that is how we will all get through this together, making sure that we're looking after each other, but looking after our own mental health.
Thank you, Brooke. Dr. Shane.
In my view, vaccination is the price of citizenship, as Aparananata said. And I think if we vaccinate and pull that very important lever, we will give ourselves choices and options. And I believe in the vaccine and would commend people to have the vaccine. It is the price of citizenship.
Thank you, Dr. Shane. And the last word from Dr. Gaurav Sharma.
Well, I just want to reiterate what you, Dr. Reti said before as well, and I said too. It's important to remind ourselves that vaccination, making sure you are getting tested if you got the symptoms, and you are using your COVID Tracer app. All those things are quite important in making sure that we have a summer where the numbers are low and passing on the infection to other people.
Thank you very much for your time, and it's been really good, and we look forward to hosting you again. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So viewers, that was a great debate on vaccination. As you heard from them, from Labour Party, from ACT, and from National, one of the basic things, or the most important things for us to do, is to get vaccinated. Vaccination does prevent. If you read the stats, at the moment, those people who are in ICU, 75% of them are unvaccinated, and 25% of them are one jabbed. So important, do take the vaccination for yourself. Oh, that was great. Coming up after the break, we will dig into cricket and talk to Jeet Raval about the hard match tonight, the must-win match between India and New Zealand. Whose side will you take? Divided loyalties for most of us, but let's talk to Jeet after the break. See you soon. Good evening and welcome to Weekend on Sunday. We just had a great debate with Dr. Gaurav Sharma, Dr. Shane Reti, and Brooke van Velden around vaccination. Moving on to something else, it's the cricket. We know that the T20 cricket match is going on at the moment in UAE, and we've had some great cricket matches over the course of the week. There have been some upsets also. Who would have thought Namibia would, out of all the countries, would be in the T20 World Cups? But great to see a small country like Namibia, who has only 6 cricket pitches, come up. There is hope for other smaller nations. While the might of India, of 1 billion people, got beaten by their fierce rivals, neighbors, Pakistan, by 10 wickets. Then we had the saga of Quinton de Kock, who refused to take the knee, but then has come back. But look, what we have today is we're going to talk to a very well-known BlackCaps who is of Indian origin. And we're going to talk to him about his life story, how he has made it so far, what encouraged him to make it, and how he has been an example to so many other youngsters and to parents actually who hope that their kids would one day play for the BlackCaps. It's my privilege and honor to invite Jeet Raval to join us this evening from his home. Good evening, Jeet. Thank you so much for your time and welcome.
Good evening, Sunil. How are you?
Good, thank you. So people would want to know, who is Jeet Raval? They see him opening for the BlackCaps, but we don't know who you are. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, look, I'm obviously of Indian origin. Originally, it came from Ahmedabad in Gujarat. and my family immigrated to New Zealand in 2004. And it was mainly my parents that wanted to come here for the opportunities that likes of my sister and I could have moving forward. And I was very hesitant to move in the beginning, as you can imagine, leaving your family and friends behind, and a very different culture that we have here. So it was quite a struggle in the beginning, but my passion was always cricket, and I did used to play cricket back home in India. So when I came here and I started playing cricket, and I started getting selected for age group sides in Auckland, and all of a sudden I started to believe that I could one day play for New Zealand and make my dream come true. And then here we are, and I had the opportunity to represent New Zealand over the last few years, and I was part of the World Test Championship winning side, the first ever Test Championship. So I've been very fortunate to have that opportunity, and yeah, it's very exciting, and I'm very privileged and honored as an Indian background to represent our community at an international stage.
What was it like playing against India? You can understand what they're talking. Did you get some sledging on the pitch?
Yeah, a few of them I played against when I was back in India as well, likes of Cheteshwar Pujara, Ravindra Jadeja, who are from the same region, so they know me quite well. So it's always nice banter floating around, and they're trying to give me a few cheeky words here and there, which umpires don't understand. But look, it's all good banter. But once you cross the line, you give your best for the team that you're playing for, and it's just heap of fun. But it's good to play against India because there's always that rivalry and also that passion of being an Indian background as well. So yeah.
Tell me the emotions that ran through when you were, when you were going on the pitch to face them as an opener, right? For the first time when you did that. I mean, it must have been really special. So, I mean, did you have a wet eye, or was your heart pumping? Because it's like, you always, as you rightly said, you played in India, you play in gully cricket, you're emulating your idols, and here you are. Who would have thought that you would be playing against them? So what was it like?
Yeah, on the day itself wasn't too bad, but the night before was an experience in itself. I think I would have got up 15 to 20 times to go to toilet, and I just remember being covered in sweat, like I was having a shower, and it was a whole new experience. But I almost didn't try to fight it and try to embrace the new experience, and just knowing that it's okay. And it was an opportunity that I had waited for a long time. So more than anything, I was nervous, but I was really excited to represent New Zealand and also just compete against some of the best cricketers in the world, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me as well.
So before you joined the BlackCaps, did you think you would even make it to the BlackCaps? What was your secret of success to be at that level, playing for your local club, going to university, studying, also balancing that? But was there a drive that you wanted to really get into the BlackCaps, or was it luck?
I guess a combination of a lot of different factors, but the drive was always there. From the time that when we migrated to New Zealand, and I knew that my parents gave me the opportunity at the sacrifice of their own careers and leaving their family and friends behind. I really wanted to make them proud. And that was my reason to wake up and get out of bed every morning. And especially it was tough, and when you get dropped from a side, or when you don't make the next level up, and then you get really disappointed or disheartened to say, hey, is this ever going to happen? But I guess if you have the resilience and the desire to be the best you can be, you will not let those little setbacks and little fallbacks let you down, and you will almost try and work harder and really improve your game. And I feel in a lot of these days, what a lot of kids tend to do is they tend to sort of make an excuse sometimes, say, hey, I didn't get selected because injury or someone else got selected. And my dad gave me an advice once that he said, if somebody scores 100 runs, you have to score 150. So you're not giving selectors a chance to have a second thought about you. So that was my driving factor. And, along the way, I've had many setbacks, but I had the goal of representing New Zealand and making my parents proud. And I was fortunate to be able to do that along the way.
Yeah, no, I mean, not only your parents, but I think your friends and your family and extended people, they feel proud that you are of Indian origin, and which you never deny of that, and I think that's really great. You're representing two cultures. It's a great opportunity. Now, moving on to T20, and I know your specialty is 5 days. You would want to bet as much as you can over the 5 days, but T20 is very fast game, and we have seen over the recent this T20 World Cup that those who were favored are now looking like less likely to win. Where does the game tonight, between India and New Zealand stand? I mean, who has the upper hand?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. And just going back to your comment about T20, it's changed the landscape of cricket around the world. It's given the lesser teams, like some Namibias, the Afghanistans, the Scotlands, who never used to compete on a bigger stage. It's given cricket a broader scale in a worldwide level. So T20 has been an absolute revelation, and it's been great for the greater good of the game. So it's fantastic to have this T20 World Cup. And like you said earlier, there was an upset in the Namibia game, and the country of only 2.4 million. So it's fantastic that this World Cup is going ahead despite the COVID pandemic around the world. And, we're playing this cricket, and especially us in New Zealand and in Auckland, particularly, who are stuck in lockdown. They can have some sort of distraction to take their mind away and watch this wonderful World Cup that's going on. So yeah, just coming to your question about what's going to happen tonight. Look, it's a hard one to answer, but there are a lot of different factors. The main factor I feel it's going to play a part is the toss, like we saw against the game against Pakistan. As we see that in the second innings of the game under lights, the dew factor is a massive part, and ball tends to skid onto the bat nicely. So it makes it easy for the batting team, that is the second batting team, to easily score those runs. So I feel the toss is definitely a prime factor in deciding who's going to win the game tonight. But if you look at the recent rivalry, 2019 ICC World Cup in England, New Zealand beat India in a close game, and in the ICC Test Championship. So in the recent history, you'd say that New Zealand has done well on a bigger stage in big events against India. So I guess New Zealand has the upper hand, but we know that India is a talent of absolute superstars, and on any given day, if they turn up, it's going to be very hard to beat. But my prediction is with the BlackCaps, as you can see from the clothes that I'm wearing. But it's going to be an exciting game, and it's almost like a do or die game, as you know, because both the teams had a loss against Pakistan's side. And now to qualify through the semi-finals, it's either New Zealand or India will go through, assuming that each team will beat Afghanistan, Scotland, and Namibia. So tonight's game is an absolute crucial game, and I hope everyone watching has their alarm set at 3 a.m. this morning to wake up and give the BlackCaps a good push.
Do you think the BlackCaps should take more spinners?
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, look, I think I've just been reading and talking to a few of my friends, and the balance of the side seems to be slightly off at the moment. And factors like whether do they bring in Adam Milne, who has lots of pace, whether they play Tim Southee, and they do have some spin bowling options covered, the likes of Ish Sodhi and Mitchell Satner, and also Glenn Phillips can bowl for overs as well. So I think spin is not the issue. I think for them, issue is whether they play like Tim Southee or Adam Milne in the final 11, because Adam Milne brings you the out and out pace, while Southee has the experience of over 15 years of international cricket. So that's going to be a deciding factor in terms of makeup of the final 11.
Yeah, but when the ball is skidding, right, and you get Adam Milne bowling at 150, all you got to do is flick for it to go. But would it be easier not to have a spinner?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question again, but as I said, the spin department is well covered. I feel they've got three really good spin bowling options with Ish Sodhi, Satner, and Glenn Phillips, who can bowl as well. So I feel it's important. And it's about how do you match up someone with Trent Boult to take up that few overs if needed. If they do bowl first, having the extra pace is always handy, because when the ball is coming at you at 150 clicks an hour, it's not easy to stand up and face. So look, I'm not sure which role they will go, but when they would have given a lot of thought to the pitch conditions and what kind of pitch it is, and all that stuff in the consideration before they choose their final 11.
By the looks of it, Pakistan has probably made the semi-final, because now they've got easy games coming up. Do you think from the other groups, which is very, tight, you've got England there, you've got South Africa, and you got Australia there. England seems to be in a good spirit, good, track record. I mean, beating Australia. Do you think England has the guts to go all the way? Or do you think, because very well, it's 20 overs, it's one match. You can win all your matches, but semi-final day, you can bat really bad and lose the game. But do you think England is a well-groomed team?
Absolutely. I feel, they won the last ICC ODI World Cup, and they've been a really dominant white ball side in last few years. And I feel they've got that style of play which is entertaining, and they play with a lot of freedom. And they've got dangerous players like Jason Roy, Josh Butler, Moeen Ali, and they got all the bases covered. So I think England and Pakistan are favourites to win at the moment, and they've got momentum on their side as well. And in T20, the momentum is really important because it gives guys freedom and confidence to go out and express their skills. And if you're feeling slightly hesitant, like India or say New Zealand might be, then it can hold you back a little bit. So England, I feel, and Pakistan, are the two favourites at the moment to go all the way. But like you said, T20 is a very fickle game and can change within a couple of overs. So we don't know, and that's the good factor about T20 cricket, and it keeps it exciting for everyone to watch as well.
Okay, last two questions. Who's going to win the toss tonight, and what would be the rough score?
Oh, who's going to win the toss tonight? Well, Kane doesn't
knowing Kane doesn't have good luck on tosses.
Yeah, knowing Kane in test matches, we used to lose the toss all the time, and I would have to go and bat on green wickets. So considering that, we're going to lose. New Zealand's going to lose the toss. But hey, we don't know. But I'm backing BlackCaps to go all the way tonight. They will turn up. And India, again, look, they will be the hot favourites to win. But if New Zealand can take a couple of early wickets, like Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli, if they can get them early, New Zealand will definitely go on to win this game.
Sure, that's great. Look, thanks very much, Jeet, for your insights into it and for talking to us this evening. That's great. And I do hope, all your insights do come true tonight. It'll be a divided nation, divided loyalties, but we do look forward to having you again. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Sunil bhai. And I just want to say happy Diwali to everyone, especially in Auckland. It's a tough time, but I think get around your friends and family and connect with each other. And, it's important that we celebrate this wonderful occasion and continue to celebrate our roots. And, have a happy Diwali, everyone.
Thanks very much, Jeet. You have a good evening. See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, folks, that's about it. Our time is nearly up. So we heard about vaccination thing. I would say do get vaccinated. It is a choice, but as the stats have proved, right, vaccination does help. It does prevent people from being into the hospital and ICU. The rate is very low. It is for yourself first, then for your family, and then nation. But do it for yourself if you can. There's also, we've got to look forward to the brighter side of things as we celebrate Diwali this week. I would want to wish every one of you, your families, a happy Diwali. My thoughts and prayers are also with those who won't be able to celebrate it this year due to some unfortunate circumstances in their families. It's never easy, but do remember that people are thinking of you, your family, your whānau, your relatives, friends are thinking of you. And I wish you all the very best for this coming week as you celebrate this Festival of Lights. And we do look forward to having you again next week. So from my side and the producer and the team, thank you so much for joining us. You have a lovely evening and a week, and happy Diwali. Namaskar.